Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a multifaceted professional from Melbourne, Australia, Mr. Utkarsh Narang. Utkarsh, welcome to the show.
Such a joy to be here, Ashutosh. Thank you for having me here.
Thank
And I love the world map behind you and the story of the podcast. So looking forward to this conversation and sharing whatever wisdom I've collected over this journey of approximately 4 decades.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, Utkarsh is a learning facilitator and executive coach. He is also a content creator. From being a physiotherapist to filming and editing 400 hours of content for Columbia Business School professor to scaling a startup and leading sales, he now helps individuals and teams outperform themselves. And Utkarsh lives by the mantra of Mahatma Gandhi: live as you were to die tomorrow, learn as if you were to live forever. What an amazing mantra to live by, Utkarsh. So, Utkarsh, my first question before I get into all the work that you're doing, tell me about your own journey in brief, and what was the inspiration to transition from all the roles that you did to finally becoming a coach and facilitator?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. 39 years on the planet, Ashutosh, and the first 20 were with my parents back home in Delhi, India. And they were both doctors. So they said, Utkarsh, you got to become a doctor too.
Mm,
And they never compelled me to it, but they just created that environment where I thought being the doctor was the right thing to do. And so I became one. After 6, 7 years of practice, having 3 clinics, I realized that I wanted to have like a larger impact on the planet because
mm,
it's such a big planet. Why do we want to stay just like a frog in a well? And so I started networking in 2012, seeing like who could I meet, what could I do. I had no idea where I was going,
mm,
but I met a professor at the Columbia Business School, and they needed someone to add to their team. There were 2 people at that point. They had a startup, and I said like, hire me, and I'll be a great asset. And they're like, what will you do, Utkarsh? I said,
mm,
I'll figure it out. Whatever
mm,
you want me to do, I'll figure it out. But I would love to be a part of this organization.
mm,
And so I spent 8 years with them. The first 4 in filming and editing, and that's where I was filming with these leadership professors, Ashutosh. And I would pinch myself that here are these students in executive MBA, MBA classes of Ivy Leagues who
mm,
are paying thousands and thousands of dollars and taking debt to be in that class. And here I am being paid. So it was very lucky is what I always thought of myself.
mm,
And then I learned all that content, which allowed me to then shape up into understanding that there's more to life every single day,
mm,
whether it's our mindset, whether it's our emotions, and so on and so forth. And then through this journey, a coach played a very pivotal role in helping me kind of frame my mindset. And
mm.
so I think that sowed the seeds, which then during the pandemic came out to say that, Utkarsh, you got to help more people in the world. And that's why I decided to become a coach and a
Amazing.
learning facilitator.
What an amazing journey. Thank you for sharing it. So, now let's talk about your being a learning consultant, a coach, and a facilitator. What, in your view, are some of the key components of a good learning experience?
That's a very powerful question. I think the most important to me, Ashutosh, is connection. That in whenever you're trying to learn something new, whether as an individual or as a group, you
Mm,
got to connect with each other in the room, but also connect to the content that's coming your way. Because no one wants to learn about something that you don't even feel like the need to. So that connection to me of the learners, the learner and the facilitator, and all of us together with the content is very important. The
right.
second thing which I really feel is important is the compassion, Ashutosh. That if we walk into rooms by being just dry, having some PowerPoints on the screen, not engaging with the audience with that compassion, with that heart, I think
Mm,
without that, the content and the experience will fail flat and no
right.
one's going to learn anything.
Mm,
And third, and the most important is communication, because whatever ideas I might have, I want to share that with the room, but they need to be nuanced and put into such a way that people actually understand them and people actually interact and engage with that to build on the collective. So I think
mm,
these three make the most important. It
mm,
starts for me from building connection,
mm.
compassion, and then communication. These three are the most
Great
important.
response. Thank you. And Utkarsh, what, in your view, are some of the common misconceptions people have about coaching and facilitation?
Yeah, they're two different branches. So maybe I'll break it into two quickly, Ashutosh. I
Hmm.
think so for coaching, I think I still have coaches who would enter the conversation and say, Utkarsh, I need a solution to my problem. Can you give
Hmm.
me one? And I keep telling them that you're so and so, you lead this company, you're the CEO or the whatever. I cannot step into your shoes and tell you in like 12 minutes what to do. This is something that it's your journey, so you have to figure it out. So people need to understand that coaching is not to hand you a solution. I think that's something an advisor would do better, or a mentor can maybe share their stories and help you. But a coach will help you create the awareness through which the self-awareness that comes up will help you solve any challenge that comes your way. So that's one. And facilitation, I think there's a big difference, Ashutosh, between training and facilitation. Training to me is, yes, I want to train someone on Excel. I want to train someone on emotions. Then I can go in and give content, and that's about it. Facilitation is where you actually bring that collective wisdom together, which where you allow the room to simmer through ideas, create that safety, create the vulnerability. And I love creating those experiences, which is where I think a lot of joy for me lies.
Well said. Well said. And what is your approach to helping individuals, to use words from your own notes, make fear their ally and embrace a courageous life?
I recently gave a TEDx on this topic, Ashutosh, and while I was preparing for the TEDx, all I could think of was that Utkarsh, you went from physiotherapy to filming and editing to sales and operations to content creator and coach, moved continents at age 39 with 2 kids, your wife. You're so brave, you're so courageous. And I created a small circle, inner circle, who I kind of soundboard ideas with. And one of my dear friends said, Utkarsh, are you sure that courage was the feeling or the emotion that was driving you, or was there fear somewhere? And that's when I realized that there was always this fear. As a physiotherapist, I had a fear that I would not be able to touch lives globally. As a videographer, I had the fear that I would be an imposter and not able to do something. As a growing adult, raising 2 kids, I had the fear that something were to happen to my loved one if you were to stay in India, and more details in the TEDx. And that fear was driving me. And what it comes back to again and again, Ashutosh, is that people need to deeply connect with themselves, understand who they are, because there's so much noise around us in this world. You open Instagram, you open YouTube, you open LinkedIn, you open whatever you do. You can go into an infinite scroll and not realize what happened in the last 60 minutes or 90 minutes. I think it's really important for us to be connected with ourselves. And that's what allows us to understand this fear of failure, to understand this fear of identity, this fear of whatever fears we can speak about. All of them stem from this common place. And for us to be courageous, we got to understand who we really are. And I think that's the trick.
Well said. You also speak about 5 core values. Tell me about these core values and how do they fit in with your coaches and facilitation work that you do?
Yeah, the values are everything to me, and I typically don't want to share my values at the start, but I want to ask the listeners to maybe pause the podcast right now and work on their own values, and then come back to listen to it. But if you were to go in that flow, discipline, excellence, freedom, growth, and love. These are the 5 values that I have, Ashutosh, and they've developed over the years. It was not that day one some divine force came in and there was light from the heavens and the 5 values came into my lap. It evolved over time. But I think how these values now help is that if I've committed to being here with Ashutosh at a certain time, then I have to be there before time. If I'm 10 seconds late, then I'm late. So I have to join the call right on time. I have to enter my conversations with my coaches or facilitating sessions on time. There was once I was doing a session, Ashutosh, with a leadership team of a young startup, very hyper growth startup. And we told them that 11:15 is tea. We'll see you all back at 11:30, 11:31, 33, 35, 37. And no one showed up. Maybe 2 people showed up. And I get really upset with that because I feel that it's our commitment to the other person that we show up on time. And that's discipline. Even on my marriage, Ashutosh, it's a funny example. On our card, it was written that the barat or the ceremony or the procession, whatever the word is, will arrive at 7 p.m. We were at the gate at 6:57 because that's what discipline has taught us. So that's how the values come up in all my interactions and engagements throughout my day.
Very good. And I completely agree with you on the time part of it. I always say anybody who is on time is respecting not just himself, but all the colleagues and me as well.
Absolutely, 100%.
My next question, Utkarsh, is how do you integrate technology and other digital tools into your own learning and coaching practice?
Yeah, I think technology is like at the center of everything, Ashutosh. This podcast is being made. I'm in Australia. You're in Melbourne. Or you're in Delhi. Different time zones. But this is happening because of technology, right? And then you viewers across the world will listen to it. So I think technology is at the center of everything. I see a lot of people fear that, oh, how AI is going to change this and AI is going to change that. But if we approach it in the right way, maybe it's going to help us. Maybe it's going to help us create more content, do better, and engage better. I think the big idea is that we could either become consumers or creators. And I think that's a balance that we all need to figure out for ourselves.
Mm.
What is it that we are passionate about and how do you want to approach it? In terms of my own work, Ashutosh, I think Zoom's ability to take notes now is so beautiful that I get mesmerized every time I read that note. So Zoom AI kind of takes the notes for our meetings now. We don't have to do that on our own. There's other software that we use for subtitling, for editing the clips out, content creation through Chat GPT. Everything can happen, but then the heart or the love, that's the value that needs to be put in by that human touch, and that's how we use a lot of technology.
Correct. And how do you ensure that your programs lead to a measurable growth for individuals and their teams?
Always a challenge, right? Because but then the belief is that if there is no return on the investment, and
Mm.
investment, I'm not just speaking about the rupees or the dollars put in, but it's the time. Say if 30 leaders commit to
Mm.
sitting through a workshop for a day, that's 30 into about 8 hours, that's 240 human hours.
Mm.
And I start my conversation with that we're going to invest 240 hours of human time in this workshop, or
Mm.
in this room that we are in. If we don't do justice to this, then we're all failing as human
Right.
beings first. And so that's the most important. I think the best ways to assess the impact of a program, and we do that through the survey after the program, which does have recency bias, but it's still a metric. The
Mm.
second thing is having pre and post assessments always helps. And
Mm.
those pre and post should be more than just self ratings. They should be driven by managers as well. I think that again becomes helpful. The third and the biggest metric that I've seen, Ashutosh, is what comes from the ultimate point of contact for us. So, for
Mm.
example, we're working with again a hypergrowth startup. We were working with their L&D team, and they were saying, Utkarsh, we've put a practice that we have to do gratitude every Friday in the
Mm.
organization so that people become more expressive and be more connected with each other.
Mm.
But no one does that.
Yeah.
I'm like, why do you think that's not happening? And they said they don't believe in it and this and that. I'm like, okay. So in the next few workshops, webinars, we'll put a practice that we'll share that gratitude and we'll understand what's the science behind it. Why
Mm.
should I do it? What's the why of the exercise? And then the point of contact after 3 months said, Utkarsh, the number has increased on every Friday. I see more notes being shared across. I see
Mm.
more messages on Slack, and that to me is the biggest return on investment that I see for the
Well
effort that we
said.
put in.
Well
Ashutosh.
said. Well said. Can you also share with us a story of a client? I don't want any names, of course,
Mhm.
who has been through a significant transformation as a result of working with you?
Yeah, many stories come to mind, but I think my favorite, in a way, I'll share that is there was this software engineer who I was working with, and for many weeks he would just come back and say, "Utkarsh, I'm seeking peace. I'm seeking peace." And he did not know what peace meant to him, and he was always saying, I want financial independence, I want this and that. And it was a really kind of we tried to work through the values, we tried to work through the identity. And then in one conversation I asked him, come, let's do a visualization. And over the next 20 minutes I took him through a visualization. He shared in depth as to what he was feeling through that. Before the conversation he said, Utkarsh, I have a lot of heaviness on my heart, and it shows in my interactions, in my conversations. But through the visualization, he just guided himself.
Mm.
I asked him, like, as you walk down that path, what do you see? I wanted him to see light, but he was still seeing darkness.
Mm.
But through that process of guiding himself out of it, he was
Mm.
actually able to find the solution. And at the end of the session, he reported that he has a few takeaways, he has a few actions that he can commit to,
Mm.
which then we created accountability for him to make progress.
Amazing. One more question relating to learning and development, and then we'll talk a little bit about your other passion, which is understanding human behavior.
Mhm.
What are some future trends in learning and development that you are particularly excited about?
Yeah. I think the advent of AI and how it's going to read all our data to then give us very personalized learning, I'm super excited about that. That's a
Mm,
challenge that I think I've not cracked yet because I've not put my heart and mind to it. But I think those companies that solve it and are solving it already, I think
mm,
it's going to be a massive gameplay where it's like you're stuck in a situation which technology can almost like assess and give you like a solution right there, or give you at least a nudge, or point you at the right content, because
mm,
there's a lot of knowledge in the world, but how we use that knowledge is going to be wisdom. And I
mm.
think technology has to become smart to assist human beings in building out that wisdom. So I'm really excited about how that pans out. Only the future will tell. But I think I'm an eternal optimist, Ashutosh. So I
Mm.
believe that humanity is going in the right direction. Yes, there are challenges, and whenever there are not challenges in the world, but hopefully that we'll be smart enough to tackle them and keep moving forward.
Well said. Let's now talk a little bit about understanding human behavior. And from what I was reading about you, you're quite passionate about understanding humans. How did this passion evolve, and how did it begin, and how has it evolved over time?
Yeah, I think it was very in the very early stages, Ashutosh, because I remember I've always asked these larger questions to life, like who am I? What am I doing on this planet? What's the purpose? And the purpose could be small as like just raising a family, or could be big as Jeff Bezos solving the world's problems, or Elon Musk creating massive things in the world. But but these questions always intrigued me. And
Mm,
during my physiotherapy days, Ashutosh, I used to cater to a lot of population who was elderly,
mm,
who was in their 80s and 90s and late 70s. And I specifically remember there was this old lady who had paralysis. And I treated her for 3 years, Ashutosh. And 3 years, I would go to her house every 2, 3 days, every 2, 3 days. And there came a point where more than there, her grandson, she would interact with me, and she was unable to speak because of the situation.
mm,
But the conversation that we would have still without her speaking a word
mm,
were something that I can still like feel goosebumps in my spine right now thinking of her. And I think that those interactions with patients who were in their late lives taught me a lot,
mm,
that what is success really, how do you create contentment in life. And that all started to make me feel like I need to study more and more human beings. And my dad and mom, they were also played a very decent role. I remember seeing the Mahabharata or the Krishna in as a young child,
mm.
and those interactions, those conversations still stay with me, and that's what's kind of challenged me. And then came along my wife and my kids, who are now 14 and 10. And I think they've been my teachers as well in
Mm.
helping me stay centered and stay focused. I remember if I would be reading like a Gmail while playing Scrabble with them, they'll be like, Dad, you got to either play Scrabble or look at the Gmail. You cannot do both with us. So their feedback has always been helpful, and I think
Yeah,
that all intrigues me to understand human behavior even more.
well said. And what do you believe is the most important factor in motivating individuals to change their behavior?
It has to come from within, Ashutosh. There is no other way. I mean, I use this example on my in my workshops and everywhere. If I have this hand and I place this hand like this, no one can move this hand without me wanting the intention to move it.
Mm,
And that choice is mine.
mm,
We have to teach human beings wherever it is possible, or at least nudge them in the right direction where they choose to take action, because
mm,
without action nothing's going to happen. And the choice is always a human being's. I
mm.
can tell someone that, oh, you're feeling this way, or your mental health is that, you should do that. You're getting overweight, you should do exercise. Or but that does not work.
Right.
It has to come from within. So I think the work, one of my favorite coaches, she speaks that the work is in you. And I think that's what I truly believe in. And until
Mm,
this comes from the person, nothing can happen.
mm. Amazing. So, time for two or three more questions.
Absolutely.
How do you approach understanding and navigating different personality types in your coaching?
Yeah. It's a strong opinion I have about this,
Yeah.
and maybe some people would hate me or love me for that. But what I really believe is, Ashutosh, we have everything within us,
Mm,
and I can use a Myers-Briggs or I can use a DISC profile. And all respect to all of those things, they're very important things. But
mm,
I believe that I can be anything and anyone at any point in time. Again, coming back to my choice, I can be someone who can be deeply motivated to change things around me, but the next day I can go back to saying that I'm not going to do anything, I'm going to be lazy. It
mm,
is again a choice that we make every day. our environment, people around us, they all allow us to do that. I think what's most important and what's worked for me is to find a way to be non-judgmental with ourselves and with others around the world. And I start with ourselves because I've seen many coaches who would judge themselves for a small mistake, for a small fear. I think it's that the self-love and self-care starts with self first, and then it goes beyond. And I often say that the world is nothing but 8 billion perceptions, each trying to prove that my perception is better than yours. And I think that is where we need the shift, that it's okay for whoever has whatever perception. I'll continue my path based on who I know I am.
Great response. Two more questions. What is the one behavior or mindset that you believe everyone should cultivate for a fulfilling life?
One word: growth mindset. I think it's super important for us to understand that anytime feedback comes our way, anytime we fail, anytime we get criticism, there are two options. Either we can sulk with it or we can grow with it. I think we should always choose growth, because growth comes very naturally to the human body. And why not grow when that's an option?
Correct. And my last question to you, Utkarsh, can you share a specific example where understanding human behavior helped you drive better outcomes for a client or a team?
As soon as you asked this question, part of me went to a very personal challenge, but I'm going to refrain from sharing that, because I think I want to talk about the team first. I was once in a workshop with an infotech company, Ashutosh, and it was day 1 and day 2. At the end of day 1, I received feedback, and in that feedback, they had a few things that they very clearly shared, that we are very technical people. We don't want fluffy content. We want something that's really actionable and deliberate. The next day, the deck that I had, it about like 45 slides on it, we eliminated everything as a team. And we said we will give them what they want. And we went in with just a case study that we picked up from them. And I think just understanding that nuance, that this cohort wants something that's different from our previous cohorts. I think just that understanding, the flexibility, and approaching it with a growth mindset helped us have a spectacular second day. And that client got retained for a few years with us. So which was very heartening to see.
Very well said. And on that note, Utkarsh, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me. I loved your point about the growth mindset and how important it is for all human beings. Thank you also for speaking to me about your 5 core values. When I made a note, they were discipline, excellence, growth, freedom, and love. Thank you for speaking to me about your amazing journey and what has led you to become a learning consultant, a coach, and a facilitator. We didn't get a chance to talk about the 400 hours of content you created, but maybe some other time. Thank you also for your thoughts on understanding human behavior. Thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Truly a joy.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.